Everyone. Welcome to Hebraic Awakening. Today, we're going to have a little chit chat, just a little conversation, because we need to really talk about this discernment that we swear we have. But I challenge you, are you operating from discernment or are you operating from anxiety? Right? Because I am guilty of that too. In my earlier walk, I would say, the Lord said, well, I heard the Lord say, well, He told me to do this, right? And He did not. Okay, He did not. My anxiety told me to do those things. My brokenness, my trauma told me to do those things. And I masked it as the Most High, as many of us do. So, those of us from the transatlantic slave trade, and those of us who just come from traumatic experiences in life, right? You have generational trauma that you are born with, right? You are born with your nervous system dysregulated. You are born with unwanted mental health disorders, all right? So when we come into faith, we believe that our declaration as we give our lives over to Yeshua, as we give our lives over to the kingdom of the Most High, and we swear to walk in His ways, we think that that overrides all of that trauma, right? We think that Yeshua is just going to take on all of that and give us this renewed spirit, all right? And we say we are born again. However, our actions say that we are not. I think that people tend to believe that if you are operating in anxiety, depression, and any other mental health disorder, that you are not saved. You don't have salvation. That is not true, all right? You have to walk this thing out. However, we are not taught in our religious spaces to walk in mental wellness, all right? So when I hear people say, I'm going to let the mind of Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, be in me, all right? Because I'm going to do what He did. Well, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the decisions that we are making because now you are going to have to eat all of the Lord told me, Jesus told me, Yeshua told me, Yahweh told me to do this, and it didn't work out. All right. And so now you have to eat crow. All right. Because I'm always watching people's fruit, right? If you say the Lord told me or Yahweh told me, and then you go back on that, I'm looking at you upside your head, just like I used to look at myself upside my own head, right? So we need to be careful, all right, of what we say is the Lord or Yahweh, right? We need to be really careful blaming stuff on wisdom when it comes from our own anxiety. So let's talk practically about how we can see ourselves operating from anxiety versus operating from discernment. Now, when you claim to be seeing something in the spirit or hearing from the spirit, it should not be from a place of anxiety. If you feel rushed, if you feel anxious, or you feel I just can't shake it. I got to make a decision. It's the Lord. He's ushering me. He's prompting me. He probably is not, right? Because discernment comes from wisdom. hmm And wisdom is quiet and it is slow to react, right? So, of course, there are times where you have to react quickly, but discernment, you have to slow down to see or to perceive a thing, all right? You cannot rush into making a decision if you're operating from wisdom or discernment. Anxiety keeps you in fear, but discernment, all right? Discernment guides you to respond and to recognize when things are misaligned, right? So when it comes to making a decision, right? Discernment is always going to tell you to hold on a minute. Now, because of our trauma, right? Because of our brokenness, because of our nervous system being dysregulated and on high alert, sometimes we don't know how to slow down. If you have an anxiety disorder, or if you have depression or any other kind of mental illness, you cannot safely say that the Spirit said, right? So you're going to have to slow down. And this is why it's very important for us to heal, right? The Israelites in the wilderness were on high alert. You could tell that their nervous system was dysregulated because they had been through slavery, right? They couldn't sit still. If they did, they felt like Yahweh wasn't really listening to them. They saw things in a very pessimistic way instead of being optimistic. All right. So, with all of the miracles, signs, and wonders that they saw, their nervous system was still dysregulated. So I would caution those of us who are really invested in hearing from the Spirit and seeing all of the signs, miracles, and wonders. Your nervous system is still dysregulated. You still have a mentality that will not allow you to discern what's coming ahead. And it's not because you don't love the Most High, it is because you're not healed. Now, we have many of these prophets today and these seers that swear they are hearing from the Spirit or the Ruach HaKodesh, and they are not, okay? They are seeing and hearing from the emotional realm. And that is something that I was taught way back in my Pentecostal days. Once I got a whiff of how prophets move, and they are discerning your emotions, all right? And I could speak a lot about like group mental illness, and there's a specific term for it, but there is a such thing as group mental illness. I think we all seen it. Was it last year when everybody thought the rapture was going to happen, and everybody that believed that was having those dreams, all right? And so you're like, well, everybody is having those dreams, so it has to be true. No, there is such thing as group psychosis. Again, the Israelites in the wilderness had group psychosis, if you will. All right? So the way you perceive a situation shapes the decisions that you make. Anxiety and discernment can sometimes look similar because both cause you to pause, evaluate, but they operate from very different foundations. All right, so I'm going to read off some of this. Rooted in fear, right? That's anxiety, but seeing from discernment is rooted in wisdom. Okay, you react quickly when you are filled with anxiety, but discernment, you respond thoughtfully. All right. You are driven by past wounds when you see from anxiety. But when you see from discernment, you are guided by the present reality, right? And some of us take immunah or faith, and we just decimate the meaning, okay? Because you are not trying to see something that the Most High never ever gave you discernment on or never ever showed you, right? So some of us have faith for $1 million house and your finances is trash. Or we have faith for a husband or a wife, but don't know how to get along with anyone, right? Our relationships are trash and you don't want to learn. You just want the Most High to give me somebody that'll love me, that'll love me right where I am with your stank attitude and all. And that is not how discernment and wisdom operates, all right? Anxiety interprets silence as rejection. That is a lot of faith believers, right? They interpret silence as rejection. Discernment allows space without creating stories. So if it is silent, right, it is not because you're being rejected. You need to sit in that silence. I love to say that when I ask a question and I really want an answer, and it is silent, it is because the answer has already been given to me. I just didn't like the way the Most High packaged the answer. Because He is never just going to ignore you, right? That's just not how a good father does, right? So He has already answered you, all right? And we can give biblical references for that, but not right now. Anxiety drains your emotional energy, but discernment gives you constant emotional energy to be able to sustain. Anxiety acts like a distorted lens. It magnifies risk, it minimizes opportunities. That's a big one, and fills in missing information with fear based assumptions. All right. So, practical thoughts. Something bad is about to happen. Oh, they're pulling away from me, or I'm going to fail. Oh, I have to figure this out right now. All right. Those are anxiety based thoughts. All right. And really, with people of faith, that anxiety really does help us to miss opportunities. All right. And our discernment, man, it have us thinking about past traumas instead of being rooted in the reality that we are in right now. All right. And really, anxiety, it teaches us not to be practical. I talk about this all the time, how we as believers in the kingdom of Yahweh, we don't know how to live practically. We are so heavenly minded that we are no earthly good. And people who are not in the faith, you see them operate in spiritual principles because some of the principles are universal. If you do them, you're going to get a result. But people of faith, you operate in discernment. Let's talk about Rosh Kodesh, the new moon. Oh, the new moon. That's what the witches and warlocks do. You see that? And you go on and on and on instead of saying, you know what? Let's see what the new moon is from a biblical or Hebraic perspective, right? How do we get to the feast days without understanding the new moon or simply the new month? Or if we say the word energy, honey, she talking about new age stuff. Listen, she talking about spirituality and energy. I just don't use certain words. Those words don't belong to the witches and the warlocks like you think. Yahweh is energy. If you will study it from a scientific standpoint, you will understand energy. And I talk about that, how energy never dies, it is transferred. But if you operate from a place of anxiety and brokenness, you will hear something that I did not say. You will immediately start thinking, I'm a new ager. And you will start putting me in categories. Your past trauma is not rooted in the reality that is now. We have to learn how to see through discernment. All right. So, the discernment is the ability to accurately perceive what is true, what is wise and appropriate. It combines observation, emotional awareness, wisdom, and patience. So, if you are broken, if you are full of trauma, if you have a poor mindset, right? How are you seeing through what is wise? How do you have emotional awareness if you are broken? Right? So you can't come tell me Yahweh said when you are emotionally unaware, you're going to hear from a different place. Now, discernment isn't passive. Discernment makes decisions, wise decisions, but it doesn't rush because of emotional pressure, right? So that's why you have to be emotionally aware. This is why Yahweh wants us to be healed. This is why Yeshua said, I want you to have life, and not only life, but I want you to have life abundantly, right? Because you can have what you call salvation and still have a crappy life. And most people say, well, I'll just wait till I get to the other side in order to experience true peace and shalom. No, I can experience shalom right here. All right. And when I learn what shalom really is, I know that I can experience it. All right. Because from a Hebraic standpoint, the Most High gave you the authority or the ability to destroy chaos. Honey, so every time chaos come my way, I am emotionally aware that it is chaos, and now I can use discernment to make a qualified decision to destroy that chaos, to get that chaos right on up out of my way. That is true shalom. Not that chaos is not going to try you, but that you have the authority to make it go away through the power of our Hamashiach. Let's talk about the fruit of anxiety. Anxiety produces overthinking, hypervigilance, impulsive decisions, emotional exhaustion, difficulty trusting yourself or others. Discernment, that fruit produces clear boundaries, wise timing, healthy caution without the fear, confidence in decision making, peace even when the answer is difficult. So we need to know the difference in the fruit. So again, when somebody is discerning and somebody is saying, well, this is what Yahweh said, and it isn't lining up with anything, that is not immunah. That is not faith. That is anxiety speaking. What I said might ruffle some feathers because most of us are rooted in religious thinking anyway, right? Because we will not deal with our trauma, our anxiety, our depression, our personality disorders. Many of us are on the spectrum and have not been diagnosed, and you know something is wrong with you, yet you have all of the biblical and spiritual answers. No, you do not. And it is time, all right, that leaders incorporate mental wellness in every Torah session. You cannot read Torah and not get mental wellness out of the Torah. You cannot read the prophets. You cannot read about the kings and not see the emotional trauma that they are going through and the crazy decisions that they make, right? So when we read the Bible again, we're reading it through the perception of trauma. However, the Most High wants us to be emotionally sound, emotionally aware, all right? So that we can operate in true discernment, not this made up discernment that we see all over the internet called prophet lying. That's what I call it, prophet lying. And sometimes we are the prophets who are lying to ourselves. And it has got to stop because the next generation and the generation after that is depending on us to teach them about healing so they can face what is coming. However, many of us want to be raptured out of what is coming. And I talk about that because even if you don't believe in the rapture, yes, you do, because you believe that the Most High is going to bring about this second Exodus and whisk you on out of all of your troubles, and you're just going to be in the wilderness getting it together, safe from harm. That ain't nothing but the Hebraic side of the rapture. I know many people don't like it, but I talk about that all the time. The Hebraic rapture, going into the wilderness, sitting there chilling while everybody else getting that work and you just protected. That is not sound doctrine. But again, when we're reading our word and we're reading from a place of trauma, We definitely want somebody to rescue us out of our trauma while we don't have to do any work. And that is just not true. When we read the Bible and we read history, we see that that's not true. So you have to have a hard conversation with yourself. Are you operating from a spirit of fear, anxiety, or are you operating from a place of discernment?